Hi, my name is Kelly Hendricks, and I'm here to discuss the technology that I used this week in my classroom. As you can see, the technology I chose was Jamboard by Google. And what I have pulled up here is an example of chapter questions that I ask my students after reading a chapter in our novel. I guess I should have prefaced that to say that I teach English language arts, and so this is how I've chosen to use Jamboard. So I made 8 slides, each with a different question about the chapter that we just finished reading. And I shared that with my students in Google Classroom. And then they clicked on the link, and I gave everybody editing access. And then they can come in here and answer using a sticky note. And they can choose colors. And then they can say 3 hours, save, and then their answer is up there. So then they can change the size, they can edit it if they change their mind, they can also add their name. So I could do 3 hours, save, and then it would have my name and my answer. So then I ask all students to put an answer up, and then we discuss which answer is the correct answer, and we can have a class discussion based on that. So that's how I used Jamboard this week in my class. Using Jamboard allows all students to answer the questions with less pressure on individuals. Normally, I stand up and just ask questions out loud and wait for a student who knows the answer to answer. Sometimes we'll do a think, pair, share where they talk with each other and then a group will answer. But this is a great way to get the entire class involved all at once. So the theory behind this I thought was Bloom's taxonomy, because it involves answering questions, recalling information. Each question involves a different level of Bloom's taxonomy. And it impacts student learning because they are all learning from not only what we read, but then they're learning from each other because they can read each other's answers. And then they're still learning from me, the teacher, because I can, instruct them as to which answer is correct, why somebody put a different answer, why this answer is correct. We can have a group discussion on that. So the second question is reflect on your current use of technology. So I use a lot of technologies in a day. The main one I use is Google Classroom, and I'll show you what I do. We've been making learning guides all year, and so each week I will post this in Google Classroom, and the students can come through and see what we will be doing each day, so they know what to expect and how long each one of those activities should take, and it helps me plan and it helps the students know what's coming and be prepared. Then I do the same thing for my other English 1 classes. Share daily what we will be doing, and so on and so forth. We also use, this is Google Slides, I apologize, and then I will post this in Google Classroom under classwork. So you can see here they can go into the learning guide. They can find their weekly bell work, which is also using Google Slides. That's where they answer that. Questions, chapter questions, homework, all of that will be in Google Classroom. Another technology that we have that the district bought is Notability. So when they open, I'm trying to find a good one, but if they open homework, and then they need to then they need to send it to Notability. Notability allows them to write on it and do other things with it. So Notability is great. If your school does not have it, I highly suggest Notability. And all the students' iPads have that. Unfortunately, we don't have it on my MacBook Pro, so I cannot show you. But again, it's called Notability. We use Zoom every day for hybrid teaching. So when we have several students that are online learners still, although most students are in the classroom, and those that are still online learners, I just go over to my stream, start my Zoom. The kids know where to go every day to find the Zoom, and then we involve them in class from there. Another item I use is my projector. That's what I will project the bell work on. Here was one we used recently, and I'll just present it on the screen. And then the students go to their Google Classroom again and open their bell work, and they can answer in slides, and then they just turn it right in on Google Classroom at the end of the week. Another item that we use is we use Study Sync. As you can see, my session has ended, but it is our textbook through McGraw-Hill, and it's all online. So I can go in here and create assignments and grade them as well. And this is where the students go to answer the questions for the novel that we're reading, or there's also grammar lessons and things like that. I use Google Forms a lot for tests and quizzes. I like Google Forms because it will grade multiple choice questions for me, and then it's just a really easy format, very easy to create tests and quizzes. And sometimes I find adaptations for online learners a little bit difficult. So when I do find something like Jamboard, it makes it a lot easier to include them in the classroom. They can be at home and be a part of our discussion just as much as if they were in the classroom. So the third question, reflect on the process of teaching through the use of technology. So going back to Jamboard, using Jamboard as part of our lesson was great. Students learned a new technology that we have not used, and they had fun answering the questions in a different way. A lot of times they just sit and ignore, don't answer, and this forced all of them to be a part of the discussion and the answers. One thing, some students who weren't maybe paying attention while we were reading would wait to see other answers before posting their answer, their little sticky note, but I determined that to be okay because they still had to figure out which of those answers were correct, and then they had to write the best answer that they thought was, or write the answer that they thought was best. So also this was easier to use with my smaller classes versus my class with 18 or 19 students. You know, just time-wise it was easier. But it wasn't a big deal. It just took a little longer with those classes. The only thing I downside to Jamboard is that in order for students to post their answers, they have to be editors, which means they can come in and like delete or change things that I have put up, or delete others' post-it notes. So we just had to have a discussion that that's not appropriate to do. And you're not to be, they can draw, so they're not to be drawing on here, doing inappropriate things like that while we're discussing. The only thing I had them allowed to do was to do the sticky note with an answer, and not mess around with the other things. So that would be nice to be able to have them be able to answer without being able to mess up what I've done. Maybe that's something Jamboard will fix eventually. But I really overall liked the use of Jamboard, and I think I will use it again as we finish out the school year here. Maybe not daily, but once a week, or once every other week, just as a different way to do our routine. So the final question, how did this activity impact or reflect on how this impacted student learning in your classroom? So I feel like this activity really impacted student learning in a positive way. It was an excellent way to bridge the gap between in-school and online learners. Often online learners don't get to answer our questions or be a part of our discussion just because it's difficult. And so this allowed them to be a part of that. And for example, one particular student, will use her initials, AM, was on Zoom for that day, and she really enjoyed being able to be a part of the classroom. She didn't feel like she was separate. She was still able to answer and be part of our discussions and be part of what we were doing in class. And she felt like she was just as much a part of the class as if she had been in school that day. She didn't miss any experiences by being on Zoom versus in school through the use of Jamboard. Another great quality was that the activity involved the entire class, not just depending on that one student who always answers the questions. A lot of times you'll find that everyone waits for the smart student or the A student, the student that pays attention, to answer for them. This required everybody to answer, and I really liked that. And another good thing is that it wasn't, there was no pressure on, like if I say, John, what's the answer to this? I'm putting pressure on that student to find the answer. This answer, the students read the answer, post their answer, read the question and post their answer. And it's not one person I'm calling on. It's not one person being depended upon. And there's no pressure. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have about Jamboard and the technologies that I use in my class. As I said, I really enjoyed this, and I hope to be using it again, and I'm glad that I was able to play around with it and learn some things about it and have the students learn how to use it. So thank you very much for your time, and hope you have a great day.